Welcome to our
Hello.
podcast. It's Raina, Robert, and Nicholas, and today we are going to be having a very interesting discussion on the significance of high performance, what it means to us, and its relevance in our life. So let's kick off.
Robert, what does being high performant mean to you?
Well, in my personal opinion, high performance is related to what you're outputting. So it's not necessarily how much work you're putting in, but it's what you're actually getting out of the work that you put in. If you're more effective with how you're working, then that's a much higher performance. Similarly, if you're putting a lot of effort into something, but you're not getting anywhere with it, maybe you're struggling to get some concept work or your code's not executing properly, that's not high performance because you don't have anything to show for it.
Yeah, I definitely agree that high performance has a stress on the output and your ability to show what you've been doing to other people and have that be a legitimate thing. Not only do you come out with content, but with legitimate content, both in its quality and in its appearance. It looks professional. You can tell that the person knows what they're talking about, and it's clear that you put enough time into the subject to know what you're talking about and to be able to demonstrate legitimate understanding.
So you're measuring high performance by how other people view your content. Is that correct?
Or just the standard that you could show it to other people and that they would be able to learn based off of what you demonstrated to them. If you could teach other people with your content and with your understanding, then that's high performance.
Being able to teach someone else. Is that necessary though? Because if you're starting off on some new project, like hypothetically say I were to go into working on quantum tomorrow, I would not, by your logic, be high performance for at least a month until I understood quantum, even if every day I was working diligently and if I was increasing my understanding every day, until I actually had enough understanding to hold my own, I guess by your metrics, would I not be performing highly?
Even with that, though, with your metric, Robert, of being high performant, even with that analogy, let's say I went into quantum tomorrow and started looking into it. From my understanding, you view being high performant as outcomes and what you're able to show people, right? But if I'm learning
to show people what's changed, either what you've created or what your understanding has changed. It's like either you're changing something by making something new, or you're changing by changing yourself, increasing your own knowledge.
Yeah. Okay, that makes more sense.
I did rephrase that. I did phrase that badly. Output is generally associated with content. I understand that.
Yeah.
I guess what I was referencing then was mastery, and you can be high performing at every level of understanding. That's only what high performance looks like at a master level. But I think that you can perform highly throughout the process of educating yourself on something.
So if your definition was only high performance for mastery, how would you define performing highly, like as a novice or as an intermediate? Do you have a definition for either of those?
Yeah, I think that it varies, but I think that it's based on productivity and the validity of how you're engaging to educate yourself on something. So using valid sources and a variety of sources and engaging in different activities. So you're reading articles, you're watching videos, you're going down an educational rabbit hole, you're reading research papers, you're looking at people who are experts in the field and seeing what they have to offer you. So I think that in order to be able to perform highly in a certain area, then you have to be taught or educate yourself from people who are legitimate sources and knowledgeable. That way you can set yourself up well also.
So you're either acting in a way that is defined as like being high performant in a mastery, or you're learning from those people who already have mastered it and are acting in that way, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. That makes sense, because if your goal is to get to the point where you're able to understand and teach and really comprehend what you're talking about, then it does make sense that you'd have to learn from those people. What about the times when you're not learning from those people? What about the times when you would be just working on a project or trying to dig through it yourself to further your own understanding?
I'm not going to speak in absolutes because there are certainly exceptions, but I think that often if you don't necessarily know where you're going, or if you are going off of sketchy sources, or if you're just kind of like guessing and doing what you think is right, then you can't be confident in the fact that you are performing at a high level. And often on your own, you take a lot longer to do things, or you can't achieve them in the same quality because with the abundance of information in the world, there are probably people who have looked into what you're looking for and who have done it well or explained it well. And so I think that part of how you can perform highly in the most productive and efficient way is to learn from other people.
Okay. Did you say your own definition for this, Nicholas?
I did not. No, not yet. My definition of high performance was actually something because I was like, we were talking about this just earlier today, and my definition of it has recently changed. But now I define high performance as making your worst days better and better. So people like high performance people, their bad days are still better days than non high performance people. Does that make sense?
So you define how well you're performing by how well you perform on the worst days?
Yes. Because everyone has peaks, right?
Yeah.
So everyone has peaks once in a while where they're able to just work for like 8 hours straight and be completely fine. But that comes in with motivation, and self-discipline are very different, right? So motivation, a lot of people get motivation where it's just like for a few days or maybe even a week, they're motivated to work on something, but motivation doesn't last. So they're going to be at their peak for a few days to maybe a week, and then they're going to drop back down and not be able to do as many things as they were able to do before. So I see high performance as making your worst days most people's average days. So even if you're not doing anything technically, you still have a good day.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a really interesting definition. And I think that we have been so far, at least for myself, largely referencing how to advance yourself in knowledge and in growing your brain or in mindsets in the way that you look at things. But high performance is also still applicable even in the most basic aspects of life, such as sleep or exercise or other things like that. And I think that especially when looking at exercise in different sports, there are certain times when people get injured or when they're sore. Even right now, I am in a resting position because I am sore from sports. And so I think that a lot of times people do need those kind of like bad or like less achieving days in order to bring themselves back up to the peak and to the highest standards and the best days. And so I think that that's significant.
But Nicholas, like, correct me if I'm wrong, Nicholas, this is just my understanding of what you're saying, but you're not saying that we should entirely eliminate those bad days. Like, they're going to happen, stuff's going to happen. We can't really prevent that. What you're saying is that those bad days, regardless of whether they're happening or not, we should make them as good as possible. And even if we can't convince ourselves to write that article, or we can't convince ourselves to record that video, we can still convince ourselves to do the dishes or clean the house or post those Slack messages. Is that what am I getting it?
Yeah. So basically it's just raising the bar for your bad days. Yeah. So even if like you might wake up and then sure you're not going to be able to write that Medium article today. You're just not able to convince yourself. But if you are able to convince yourself to go for a walk, eat healthy that day, get a workout in, even if it's just like 8 minutes or something like that, that your day is still going to be so much better just doing those three things than if you just completely crash and do nothing that day.
I think like our definitions of high performance aren't the same, but what you're saying now, that's how I achieve my definition for the most part. I'll convince myself, like if yesterday, I'll use yesterday as an example, because yesterday I was kind of terrible. I got home from school and I just crashed, and I was in bed for maybe 45 minutes. And then I just forced myself to get up and go down to the store. And just forcing yourself to do something to make your day better. First of all, I'm not as disappointed with that day as I would have been had I done nothing. Second of all, forcing myself to get up, forcing myself to do something made it so that I was much easier when I got home to do a few more things before collapsing again. The momentum that I had from getting up, doing something relatively easy, but actually following through with that helped me to finish other stuff. So I think you're right about that. I think that that's a very smart way of going about it.
Right, for sure. And there's so many different areas of your life where you can thrive in. And so even if you are not able to be performing well at the highest or most challenging level, at the intellectual level, even just to be able to get yourself moving or to force yourself to achieve tasks helps you kind of train yourself and like show yourself that you can do something other than crash. Even if it's not the best, most productive thing you've ever done in your life, by going to the store, you were doing something that was helpful for yourself, potentially for your family or for the people around you. And you were also proving to yourself in a way that you could still do something, even if it wasn't going to be the most revolutionary thing you've ever done.
Exactly. Like I had a friend who used to say that if you're ever struggling with productivity, just do something to get the ball rolling. Do you have any ideas on what that something should be done? Because in my general opinion, there are things that you can do that are better, and there are things that you can do that are worse at getting that ball rolling. I'd be interested to hear what you guys, like, if you ever have tried that before, if you've ever tried just doing something, what do you tend to do? Or is it just whatever happens to come to mind?
I'm completely stuck and I'm just not doing anything and I just can't convince myself to do something. The easiest thing and like most impactful for like lowest amount of effort and like biggest results would just be meditating for like 5 minutes. Like just 5 minutes of meditation is like, from there, I just, after meditating, I saw it like, then I can go and do something that's a bit harder that I need to convince myself to do, like going to work out. I don't enjoy working out. In fact, I hate it, but it's still like whenever I do, that day is just so much better afterwards. So if I can't convince myself to do something, then I usually just meditate for 5 minutes and then afterwards, like try again. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but
I think I'm the complete
similar
opposite.
to Nicholas, I think that an approach that I often go with is going on a walk, because by getting yourself moving, then you can get those endorphins, and it's a good way to figure out what you are thinking about and kind of reflect on what's going on in your life. It doesn't have to be super serious or super concentrated. It's just kind of an opportunity to get your body moving and to let your mind wander and kind of see what is going on in your life, what you're thinking about, without having to take action on anything immediately, because you can just take yourself on a walk. And when you get back, then you'll be more centered and kind of have a better reminder of your priorities and what's going on for you.
Indeed. I'm sorry, Nicholas. I agree much more with what Raina said. If I were to meditate for 10 minutes, I would just convince myself not to do anything. But if I'm going to force myself to go for a walk or to go exercise a little bit or to go do chores is what I often do, then
clean your room. That's another good one.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just something immediate that gives blissful feedback. Either you walked around the block and maybe saw something pretty, or you're now tired and like out of breath, or you've got a pretty room to work in. It's just meditating. I would definitely convince myself to not do something. How do you not do that? Like, how do you, instead of convincing yourself not to do it, because obviously I don't want to not do it. Obviously, the rational part of my brain wants to get up and work, but the irrational part of the brain, which tends to have a lot more control, is thinking the opposite. How do you squash down that irrational part? Or do you just not have it?
I it's I mean, what I was talking about is like, for me, meditating is quite, like, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's probably one of the easiest things to convince myself to do, because all I need to do is just go on my laptop, type 5 in my browser, and it just immediately pops up like a link to like a 5-minute meditation video. And I just sit there. It's because I've used it quite a few times, but I just sit there, do that 5-minute meditation, and then afterwards, I don't know, I just feel refreshed, right? So it has a similar effect to just going on a walk. Going on a walk is something that like I do enjoy doing, but it doesn't always work. Like if it's an extremely rainy day, then I'm probably not going to go on a walk. If it's 41 degrees outside, I'm probably not going to go on a walk. So it has a similar effect to that, but it's just, instead, it's just like a 5-minute meditation thing that I just need to open up my laptop to do it. So it's really easy, yet it has like a really impactful result. So I don't know. I guess meditation just has a different effect on a lot of people, because for me, after that, then I just like look at my calendar and I'm like, all right, this is my next task. This is what I need to do now.
Is it maybe because that's what you always do? Is it maybe because that's just become a habit where you meditate and then you work, and it's just your brain says, okay, I'm finished meditating, now it's work time?
It might be.
I'm asking is, do you have like a meditation slot in your day right before work period or something? No. Okay. So you've just built this up by yourself. Yeah, that's impressive.
I mean, it does happen quite often that I'll meditate and then do the next task. And then after that, I'm like burned out again, or not burned out, but just like tired again. And then meditating won't work. Right. So yeah, it's like, so meditation is one. Yeah. I can only do it like really once a day for it to actually help. Whereas
recharge first.
Whereas like working out in the morning, which is much harder for me to convince myself to do, will usually have an impact on my entire day.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, one thing that I want to bring up before we conclude is, for each of you, it's a personal question. What is one area of your life where you either don't think that you perform highly or where you struggle to perform highly? I think for myself, it would be either in hydration or in my sleep schedule, because I find those things easy to forget about or to let fall to the wayside if I have a lot of things going on, or if there are things on my mental agenda that are hard to shake. I will spend time late into the night working on those things rather than prioritizing my sleep, even if that isn't what's good for me. Or if I'm busy working on things, I also often forget to drink water. And so those are things that I'm working on adjusting more to maximize my overall performance as well.
Fair enough. How do you forget to drink water? Not important at the moment. Sorry, go ahead, Nicholas.
I have a similar problem with sleep, where my worst days of sleep are like really, really bad, where sometimes I just don't sleep at all through the night. And it's like I'm just awake the whole time and I just cannot fall asleep. So that's an area of my life that I need to work on, because obviously then the next day after that, I'm just not going to work very well if I'm running on 0 hours of sleep, right? So yeah, I just need to work on that, because the worst days are really, really bad. So I need to bring up that bar.
I mean, I was going to say sleep because I'm exhausted right now because I got like 3 hours of sleep last night. But I feel like since you both have, I'll go with something else. Not following my calendar, like time blocking, but making a time blocked calendar is something that when I do it, my days become on average like 5 times better, just because I do a lot more work. Even if I'm not following that calendar, just having that calendar makes me do more work. But it's something that I rarely do because I don't follow it. So the monkey part of my brain doesn't see any value in it. So that's something that I'm trying to do, is making sure that I actually fill out the calendar, even if I know for a fact I'm not going to follow it, just the effort that it takes to think about what I'm going to do in a day and how much time I'm going to spend on any task.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a challenging one because it's an investment of your time, to think about everything that you have to do for a day or even for a week. It can be a large investment to balance all of your commitments and also to determine exactly what you want to do with the time when you're not sure what you're supposed to do. And so I definitely agree that that can be challenging. And I'm glad that we had the opportunity to talk about what high performance means to us and set our own goals or actively acknowledge that we each have areas to improve in. And I hope that we can all work to achieve those and to hold each other accountable as well to work on these things. And to our listeners, thank you so much for listening. We hope that you enjoyed and found this valuable, and that you will also hold yourself accountable to perform more highly, even on your hardest or worst days.
See you around, Michael.
Bye.